Hello and welcome everyone to a new episode of Money Means Business. Today we are going to focus on NEPAD and on the presidency of Egypt in NEPAD. The most important goals, the speech of Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa as he represented Egypt on behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the recent EU meetings which took place in Accra. We are going to speak about all the details regarding this issue because Egypt is back to Africa in the past decade in a way, I think, which is unprecedented, despite the fact that we were that close to Africa in the 50s and 60s, but today we are even closer to our African allies. And we are all the time working for the best interests of all African peoples to guarantee full economic integration and harmony among all of us, because this is not a luxury, it's a must to face all the global challenges that are taking place. But before going to that, let me take you to this inspection tour which was held today by Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa as he visited a number of sites in the new Alamein city. Madbouli's tour was aiming at following up on the status of the construction of ongoing projects in the city. The new Alamein city is a distinguished civilized project that the state says pays special attention to, as it witnesses the implementation of residential service, commercial and entertainment facilities on the Mediterranean coast. These were some of the statements which were said by Prime Minister Madbouli in the press conference which followed the inspection tour, in which he was accompanied by Minister of Housing, Engineer Sharif El-Sherbini, and the chairperson of the new Alamein City Authority, Engineer Ahmed Ibrahim, along with a number of other top executives. Madbouli continued that the government is aiming to make the city a point of attraction for investments and pioneers and to benefit from the promising components of the charming spot on the Mediterranean. The Premier also listened to a detailed explanation from Engineer Sharif El-Sherbini about the heritage city, which is built on 260 fadans and includes a group of diverse heritage and cultural commercial buildings. The heritage city also will include a main lake, a mosque, a church, an opera, museum, cinema complex, a Roman theater, an exhibition building, many commercial, hotel and investment buildings, and a number of luxury housing units. Also, some projects in the heritage city started operating already at the cinema buildings and witnessing great turnout from visitors. Minister of Housing also added that the Roman theater in the city, which can accommodate about 1,000 people, has also been operated as part of the activities of the new Alamein Festival for the year 2024, noting that contracts are being completed with many investors to operate other buildings in the project. Prime Minister Dr. Madbouli also visited the Ras El Hikma project, and after that he had a meeting with the top executives to make sure that all the plans of construction in these two mega projects are going on according to the schedule. And he also conveyed to all of them the greetings of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, taking into consideration that foreign direct investment is on top of our priorities to push all the time forward our economic wheel and to enrich our economic segments in general. And here, when we talk about the North Coast, it's now one of the potentials we have, and we are on the right track. It's Egypt 2030 strategy. We're going to speak a lot about this in more episodes of our program, but now let me focus on this NEPAD issue, because the speech of Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouli was very important, and it included a number of focal points, particularly the goals of Egypt while it's a presidency of NEPAD. Right after the short break, we are going to return back with more, so stay tuned. Welcome back. On behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa attended the 6th mid-year coordination meeting of the African Union held in the Ghanaian capital Accra. And he, of course, represented Egypt, and he addressed the gathering as Egypt is now presiding over Nepal. The most important goals of Egypt while chairing Nepal, they are very important. And it's for the best interest of all African peoples. And when we talk about sidelines diplomacy, they were even, I'm not going to say more important, but equally important. When you see, for example, our top diplomat, Badr Abdelati, having meetings with his counterparts from all over the Black continent, we see that we are with all the time the development of Africa. And Julius Nyereri's dam, for example, in Tanzania, which was built by Egyptian constructing companies, is one of the role models. This is only an example. And to continue with this and to shed more light on the important topic, we are very much delighted to have with us live here in the studio my dear guest, Dr. Mostafa Naggary, our economic expert of this episode of Money Means Business. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Thank you, Nermin. It's a pleasure to be with you.
And let's start immediately with Prime Minister Madbouli when he said that the main goals of Egypt's presidency of Nepal include securing financial resources for key fields in the continent, promoting African continent free trade deal, and others. Let's focus on the first two first.
As we know that Nepal was one of the dreams of, if I can say, 5 leaders of the continent. So it was an idea sponsored and covered, if we can say, by Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, Senegal, and South Africa.
Yeah.
So this was a dream for this, the leaders of these 5 countries in the continent to try to achieve the best of the resources of the country and to try to increase the economy and the social life of the Africans. So this was the idea which started in late 1999 or 1998. And then it came the African Union Summit in 2001 in Lusaka, Zambia. And the African Union approved this idea,
the creation
and they
of
called,
Nepal.
and they have launched the agency, which we call it the Nepal Agency.
New Partnership for Africa Development
correct,
Agency,
correct.
Nepal.
New, it means that there was always trials before, but this was having a sort of a strategic idea and view and vision, and they have taken the 5 countries to be as the executive committee for this agency. And after that, they have expanded that by having a governors committee, which added 15 countries more. And now most of the countries of the African continent are
members of
the Nepal. So at the beginning, there was always discussion about what should be the goals of Nepal. So it was mainly trying to benefit from the resources of Africa, which is always giving not to the continent itself. It is exported as raw materials, and at the end, you cannot have what we call now a supply chain or added value of the supply chain to try to promote and to try to invite investors to industries, to make industry in Africa, not to import the raw materials and try to leave the country as in this session. So they were talking a lot about what is the main fields which could increase the life standard of the Africans at the end. So they were talking about the internet fields. They were talking about construction for the infrastructure. They were talking about agriculture. And then it came more and more talking about climate change challenges, about increasing
And about settling conflicts,
and
about
this,
maintaining
yeah.
security and stability,
So,
because without this,
so
no economic progress can be achieved.
correct. So at the end, we always have the feeling and the confidence that Africa is going to be a big player in the global economy in the coming decades, 2 or 3 decades.
Sir, I'm going to return to that, and I'm going to repeat my question regarding the goals of NEPAD.
Yeah.
But I want to raise something which was said more than once, or at least when I was making a search regarding this, or to listen or to enrich my data about how policymakers or how economic experts are looking at Africa. They say, or many of them agreed on a statement, that if Africa got rid of colonialism, military colonialism, now Africa is suffering from what we call soft colonialism.
Correct.
Which means that the West is playing the very same role of being an occupation force, or to make Africa colonies for them, but from the economic side of the coin.
Correct.
As you've kindly mentioned, to use all the resources, to
Yeah.
have their raw materials, not to work for developments of Africa. And here I don't mean Africa on the economic level, even on the human being level.
Correct.
And not to invest in the character, in the human being. No, you should not progress more than that. You should not develop more than that. How do you see this, or if you agree with this concept?
We agree. We know that this is what is happening, and all the plans of either the G8 or the biggest economic blocks in the whole world are depending on the resources of Africa. And they prefer to have these resources in the natural or primary feature. Form. But that's why NEPAD was trying to think in another way, that we should, of course, we cannot separate from trying to promote the ideas with the global and with the biggest blocks in the whole world. But at the end, it should be on a level of understanding that Africans should benefit from their resources, and the relation between the countries, although it is now not equal, we can say that not all the African countries are having the same standards of
Sure.
living or economy.
Sure.
But this is the role of NEPAD, that they are trying to increase the competitiveness of the whole continent and try to close the gap between the economies in several countries. That's why Egypt is having a lead in this round. As His Excellency Prime Minister Madbouli was talking about the 5 main goals which at this time Egypt is trying to promote. So one of these, which we're trying to focus
Securing
about,
financial
mobilizing
resources.
about the finance, and trying to secure the finance. And that's why there is a lot of projects which
How?
is presented.
How?
It should be, we all understand that there is economy is the other side
Of politics.
of the politics.
Yeah.
So that's why we see now in Europe the new governments, which is trying a little bit to reform, if we can say. It's not a control of immigration, but to reform new programs for the immigration. Will try more and more to stop immigration, but on the
Illegal,
other
of course,
side,
immigration.
illegally.
Sir, in the
but
G7 meetings,
Yeah.
Giorgia Meloni, the Italian
Yeah.
Prime Minister, said it bluntly.
yeah,
She
correct.
said it, that they learned the lesson the hard way.
Correct.
And when they found tens of thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of people off Sicily, off Lampedusa,
Correct.
off Crete, or wherever, to, I'm not going to say invade their countries, but to be a heavy burden on them, whether asylum seekers, illegal migrants, and stuff like that. So they said that it's a must now to invest in Africa to stop this from happening, because now it's a threat to them. true, or this is
It is true.
or this is exaggeration?
No, 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 no. It is true. It is 100% true. But it, the, you know that each party in Europe it have its own agenda. But at the end there is European Union, and they have agreed for new reforms regarding the immigration or the refugees or
Asylum seekers
yeah.
or whatever.
So there is agreement in the European Union nowadays that they should improve the life of Africans.
This is it, sir. Should we use this trend right now to make the Europeans a big source of financing projects, whether they are mega or medium projects in Africa? Is this the right timing?
Egypt is a gate, as we always say, for the Europeans. And as I mentioned maybe before the air, that the Italians trade center, which is the biggest trade center in Italy, they are coming on September, and they are going to promote for the idea of Mate Plan, or for trying to improve the relation with Africans through Egypt. So it goes without saying that immigration will never stop. Always immigration come from south to north.
Yeah.
But the borders in Europe will be a little bit, as we say, not tough, but at the end they will eliminate who they will need. But
and as you've kindly mentioned, sir, every European country has its own rules.
We could be damaged.
Yeah.
Egypt could be one of the countries can be damaged because the immigration will come to our
Egypt will never be damaged.
Stop. But that's why Egypt is always
Egypt,
playing this
I think,
role.
is putting this as a first priority, and we stopped illegal migration in the past decade. Let's go to promoting the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement.
Correct.
Because this free trade area, I think this was also one of the dreams.
Of course.
And to have the African relation, the
Correct.
intra-African trade, because simply we are not less at all than other continents which already benefit from that.
Let me tell you that it's as we say, in economy you have to go step by step. So we started our trade agreements in Africa with COMESA, okay, and then we have joined to the SADC, which is the Middle and South Africa.
Yeah.
And then we have Agadir as well. Agadir, we have a part of the countries is Tunisia and Morocco as well, with Egypt and Jordan. So Egypt is always very active in having trade agreements everywhere. But in Africa, we were very concerned about the African market since decades.
Yeah.
And we remember that in 50s there was a very good relation, but more or less it stopped. But at the end, we realized that we have to work all together because the continent have a lot to do and a lot to need. They need a lot. So at the end, the continent trade agreement was, as we say, the pearl of the crown of the trade agreements. And most of the countries, I think most of parliaments have signed for that. It's only a few legislations which have to be finalized. So at the end, you will be a similar copy of the European Union. Free trade, free transmission, movement,
and maybe unified currency, why not?
It will take a long time because as it happened in Europe, they started to talk about the unity of the currency maybe since 50s. But they came to on the ground. They came at I think 99, 2 or 3, something like that. So it take a long time to try to get that. But at least we are on the right track. I believe that 5 main goals which His Excellency Dr. Mostafa Mabuli have mentioned on behalf of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was also to try to facilitate and to accelerate the Cairo Cape Town road, and also there is Victoria Mediterranean navigation road,
Yeah.
and which you cannot imagine. We here see by ourselves that each road which is constructed or done in Egypt is as we call it, it is economical strain or economical drain, and you can see to the sides always activities is built on. So you can imagine what is going to Africans, and we always, when we sit with Africans, we feel really there is a mutual desire between everybody to work together, and they are much closer to Egyptians than other investors which came outside the continent. So I believe that we have a very good chance, and Egypt is leading this round successfully. I think there is a lot of programs in the education,
A lot of programs,
in health,
but in which fields? I mean, there is
agriculture.
a 2063 agenda.
Okay.
Okay. And many would say, oh, this is such a long period of time. No, it's not long. When it comes to only 3 decades or something, it's nothing when it comes to the modern history of nations.
No, we are.
So it's we should work, but we should benefit from others' mistakes. I mean, we should
Correct.
learn from
But I can tell
the
you,
others' mistakes.
at the moment, this second which you are sitting, there is a lot of programs and the projects of electricity which is managed by
This is
Egypt
it, sir.
and a lot of
To
countries.
start with the renewable
Health.
energy, for
Yeah.
example, benefiting from the sun we have in Africa, green hydrogen, IT, artificial intelligence, mining, because of all the
mineral
resources we
resources.
have. Which
Yeah.
is which? What to start with? Because even if we go to the EU, for example. For example, the Egypt EU Joint Investment Conference, which took place only a month ago or less than a month ago, we had our homework done.
Yeah.
From March to the 1st of July. We had our agendas.
Correct.
And our feasibility studies, mutual interest in such fields and stuff like that. In your opinion, where to start in Africa? Also oil, gas, renewable energy, what?
I tell you something, Africa needs everything. As you know that I am also a board member in the exporting committee in the Federation of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Every day we have always a list of projects which is needed to be done in Africa. In all the, I mean all
Give
the...
me 1 or 2 examples.
Yeah. Let us say a country like Senegal.
Okay.
They are asking at least several fields in education, in health. Okay. Another country is asking for electricity and for road exactions. Okay. Another country is asking for the solar energy and to try to increase their competitiveness in this field. Another countries are asking for medication, for education. So you cannot say from where to start. Where to start is the infrastructure in general. If you like to increase the ability for investment.
I'm asking this question, sir, because many people or many experts are saying that we should start by any means with energy, whether it's oil and gas excavations or it's renewable energy, because without energy, how our industrial revolution can start?
The whole world is working on energy because we have a green agreement, we have to reduce the carbon emissions, we are facing climate changes. So everybody is talking about that, and you have maybe covered the COP27 and COP28. So this is it is something which is you have to work.
I'm representing just the other side of the coin, sir, because this was an issue.
Correct.
The others said no, far from that. You should first find your food. Whenever you are eating or you are not in need
Food
for
safety,
food,
yeah.
and you are maintaining your food security,
Yeah.
then it should be the very first priority you have,
Correct.
because of the drought, because of the food scarcity, because of many things.
This is
And
one of the fields of Nepal.
no, I mean others
Yeah.
would say, for example,
Yeah.
I do have in Sudan, I hope that Sudan is going to retain its sovereignty and its stability once again. In wherever, I'm not going to mention names. In this country in specific, I do have very fertile lands, but people there are not acquainted or equipped with the latest techniques of agriculture.
Correct.
So if I am modernizing my techniques and methods, I should cooperate with them even to cultivate their own lands, and then to have this comprehensive or integrated cooperation. How do you see this as an example?
As I mentioned to you, you are maybe invited, the Nile TV invited on November, September. While the Italians are coming, they will talk the same language as we are all talking, because Europe now is damaged a lot by the climate changes,
Yeah.
and drought as well. So the production is affected, and the cost of power also is very high. So their competitiveness and the price of the food is getting very expensive.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, we are working whole in the global as a one unit. We have a problem of the food security, and we have mentioned that before. And everybody knows that Africa, they have the land, and you can maintain a good production with technology, with implementation of new seeds and seedlings, as we mentioned, and you have also the power. So at the end, everybody understands this. We are not worried, but they are here because they believe that Egypt as a country, which is having a great legislations about the agricultural research centers and desert centers and water centers, and we have really a very good base of the legislations and the infrastructure to try to do that. Don't forget about the decent life program, which is affected in Egypt nowadays. We have
And President Sisi was very ambitious to implement this decent life initiative in all African countries which are in need.
It will be done, and they talk about that, and they believe that Egypt is having the base to start, because we have a very big number and the potential as well.
But here, sir, also I should talk about an important element which was said more than once by His Excellency Musa Faqih Mohammed, the EU Commissioner.
Correct.
When he said that education,
Correct.
and vocational education,
Correct.
and vocational training, because to qualify the human cadres to be able to run all these projects, or to guarantee that they are going to turn into stories of success on the ground, is part and parcel of any economic development. How also we can implement that on the ground?
I tell you, first
via
of
what?
all, legislations is very important in the continent, to try to have unity of legislations, because we don't have to forget that there is different cultures in the country. Even some neighboring countries are differently, totally in the culture. So to try to have unity in the legislations is very important. This is number one. Infrastructure, medication, and education. I think this is the four main pillars if we can talk about improve the standard of living, if we can say, for the Africans, because we still have a lot of medical problems in Africa, and we are still talking about malaria, which is killing.
Yeah, okay, but this is the same issue in Latin America. If there is dung fever here, the yellow fever is here. If there is that CT causing river blindness, you are going to find other AIDS, for example, in specific.
But I think that African countries are differ. Okay, they differ. We cannot consider all the countries on the same level.
No, of course not.
But we all understand what is Algeria is doing at the time being with Italy, from the big trade agreement for the gas. Egypt also is trying hard in this field of the power, and we are trying even with increasing the price of the solar or the diesel or the benzene, but at the end it's still less and lower than it costs. So we are trying to, every country is having their challenges,
But
we
many,
have
but
our
all countries, whether it's African or European or any country all over the world, we are all suffering the very same issues regarding to global crises, like, for example, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict,
Correct.
which resulted in very negative impacts on
Correct.
food security, chain supply, you name it. And, of course, with us in the Middle East, with this barbaric genocide war of the Israeli side, and their stubbornness and unwill to reach a comprehensive ceasefire as we speak.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it's going to be, inshallah, another a round of talks where Egyptian, Qatari and US mediators are going to sit with the Israeli side, and we hope that the bloodshed is going to have an end. I'm sorry that I'm out of this, but as my dear guest said, when it comes to economy, it's the other side of politics. We cannot separate them. Even Joseph Borrell, the EU foreign policy chief, said, "Stop the madness." I really like his word, "Stop the madness," when you know that an Israeli strike killed 30 innocent civilians at a school where they were sheltering in Gaza. I'm sorry, sir, for this interruption, but
of course, this is what is happening at the time being. We are very, of course, also sad about what's happening in Sudan, because or what's happening in Congo, Democratic Congo,
or in Yemen, or in Libya,
or there. So at the end, there should be, I think, a wise, advices to these people who are killing.
Logic, sir. We need some logic.
Even they are damaging the continent itself. When we are talking about the road from Cairo to Cape Town, if there is in the way there is some strikes or some wars or problems, it will damage that. At the end, we are all trying to work as a one unit. I think that NEPAD, as a think tank for the African continent, could do and promote more and more for the investment, which I think it is very attractive for everybody in Europe or in the US or Canada or Australia to try to promote, because at the end they have the land. I can tell you in Europe they don't have land to do anything. More and more.
If you permit me, sir, and not the youth. If we go to a country like Germany, for example,
there is no 1 hectare to be planted.
No, I mean, and the youth, if you are going to look at the age average, they are an old country, and we are a very youthful country, for example. But anyways, I'm going to return back to some of the statements or points which were said in Madbouli's speech. He outlined Egypt's strategic priorities as president of NEPAD, such as focusing on mobilizing financial resources, as we said, for priority areas such as infrastructure development projects through, and this is the point which I want to focus on, the African Infrastructure Development Program, or PIDA, P-I-D-A, implementation of the Common African Agriculture Policy, and you are my expert here regarding that, and the Green Energy Initiative. How do you see the connections of those together, serving the same goals?
We have been talking a lot about how the world is acting and how they are trying to play the big new game, if we can say. So now they are talking about the heat emission and the carbon emission, and they are talking about the green agreement at the end. So green agreement is going to be implemented, I mean, everywhere, because and it was the cause of the industrial countries, the developed countries. Africa was the highest continent to be damaged.
We pay the price of their industrial revolution.
That's correct. So that's why, and that's why Egypt was leading to talk in behalf of the continent in COP27 about who is going to pay the cost for that, and who's going to pay the transmission to the green agreement, because it cost a lot. It cost a lot. And now the Europeans and the G8, and they are understandable about that, that there should be finance for trying I think to transmit the power
And technologies.
and technology is something else. This is it goes with the time. But at the time being, everybody is trying to benefit from the finance which might be coming. You have seen that about what you have mentioned 2 weeks ago, that the European mission was here, was representing the European Union, and they have talked about a sort of joint investments of about
Tell you what,
40
sir,
billion
I mean,
euros. Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to be a little bit devilish.
No, it was.
No,
it
no,
was,
I mean,
yeah.
when you listen to the Europeans speaking about China and about the tariffs and about the rifts between
Correct.
China and the EU, you think that it's time to, I'm not going to seize the opportunity, but to say the potentials we have, and it's going to be a win-win situation with mutual cooperation. And we see that the second biggest economy is not in good terms with
Correct.
Europe. So if we are here, I'm not going to say to replace it, but at least to have a portion of the cake, because simply we deserve.
We have talked before about that the trade map is changing all over the world. So before, about 20, 30 years ago, all the capitals have moved to South Asia. According that there was cheap labors, there was cheap power, and there was potential. I think there was a very attractive environment at that time. These days it's not anymore. Most of the investments are moving to an immediate area all over the world, because we have seen the problem of the logistics and the high prices of the freights and the transportation, and that's why we have always to say that Egypt also is trying to increase the capability of its ports and its dry ports and its logistic hubs. So we have talked before about the speed shipping service, which is going to be launched between Damietta
And inshallah, these are only first steps in a very long journey.
So, but at the end, we always have to work. We always have to merge. Nobody can work alone anymore.
As I'm always saying,
and the Africans are able, and Egypt is back to the role which have played since the 50s, as you mentioned before. So I think this is the only way we have, and I think that the whole world is looking for Africa in a different way at the time being.
Amen to that. Sir, thank you very much for your input. As usual, I enjoyed our discussion. We were very much delighted to have with us live here in the studio Dr. Mostafa Naggary, our economic expert of this episode. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to leave you with the most important economic events which took place in the past 7 days. Till we meet again same time on Nile TV International. Many thanks for watching. This was Yurmina Abdurrahman.